Formula One is considering banning team bosses from talking directly with race director Michael Masi during sessions following the controversy around the finish of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. F1's managing director of motorsport Ross Brawn said it was unacceptable that Red Bull's Christian Horner and Mercedes' Toto Wolff were putting pressure on Masi in the closing stages of the race when the World Championship was on the line between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Clearly this isn't the only thing that needs tidying up from what went on in Abu Dhabi, but it's one of a number of things that could have helped the conclusion of the F1 season run smoother. There's no getting away from the widespread opinion that the end of the race and the safety car restart process was handled poorly by race control. But Masi was far from the only villain in that story, and Horner and Wolff should take a significant amount of the blame as well for the reprehensible way they acted in trying to influence Masi's decision making. Earlier in the race, Wolff was incredibly out of line by trying to dictate the decision over if Antonio Giovinazzi's broken down Alfa Romeo warranted a safety car. It was not Wolff's place to declare, "Michael, please no safety car, interferes with the race, please not." That decision is up to race control, just like Wolff would want to hear outside opinions during a race on what Mercedes should do with its strategy. Things got a lot worse during the safety car at the end of the race, with Horner getting involved on behalf of Red Bull as well. And Wolff once again wasn't shy about letting Masi know what he thought of the decisions that were taken. After the race, and having got the outcome he wanted, Horner was able to see the lighter side of it, admitting to screaming at Masi to get the lapped cars out of the way so Verstappen could have a clear run at Hamilton on the final lap with fresh tyres. In these situations, F1 teams are motivated entirely by self-interest. That's fine, but it makes any opinions or feedback they have for the race director utterly worthless. Mercedes wanted to force a scenario where the race would finish under the safety car or Hamilton would be protected by the lapped cars that were between him and Verstappen. Red Bull wanted the opposite. Race control should have been left alone to make its decisions, hopefully based on a full understanding of what's allowed in the F1 rulebook. Yes, the way the restart was handled was messy. It was confusing for lapped cars to initially be told they would not be allowed to overtake the safety car, only to then be told they could. And it's understandable that people have raised eyebrows at the fact that only cars in between Hamilton and Verstappen were then moved out of the queue. And the process that was followed for the safety car to come in soon enough to give us one more lap of racing was a little more rushed than the F1 sporting regulations say should be the case. Although that last point depends slightly on your interpretation of using one or two regulations to overrule another. But once you filter through the endless, sometimes deafening noise around this controversy, one theme that sticks out is that Masi should have made clearer decisions and made them sooner. Might he have been able to do just that if he'd not had two crybabies in his ear just as he was trying to make the most high-pressure decisions of the season? A counter-argument to that point is that Masi should be strong enough and capable enough to block out such distractions. But that's not an excuse for this unacceptable behaviour from the team bosses to be allowed to continue. Before we get into exactly what Brawn has said about this, we just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We love having you along for the ride with us, and if you like what you see here but you haven't joined the team yet, consider hitting that button anytime. The good news is change appears to be coming. Ross Brawn has been quoted by German publication Auto, Motor and Sport as saying F1 will stop team bosses from communicating with the race director next season. Our understanding is that nothing has been officially decided on that front just yet, but the matter is being given serious consideration within the corridors of power in F1. That's a positive sign. This doesn't mean teams won't be able to communicate with race control at all, but it would allow for a more manageable situation where all discussions go through the team managers without the team principals sticking their oars in. The public's understanding of how teams communicate with race control during sessions was incredibly limited before this season, when messages between the teams and the FIA started being broadcast for the first time. Earlier in the season, Wolff poked fun at those who were quick to complain to Masi over the radio with what he called Armageddon scenarios, saying it was good that it was being broadcast so we can all have a laugh. Wolff was in fact the first team member to have a message to Masi played out on air when he complained about backmarker Nikita Mazepin holding up Lewis Hamilton during the Spanish Grand Prix. Back then, Masi said it was rare for him to hear from Wolff over that radio channel. In another comment that didn't age well, in Azerbaijan, Masi said the potential for those messages to be broadcast appeared to be making teams think twice about what they complained about. There appeared to be little thinking twice going on at the end in Abu Dhabi, but as Masi himself said earlier in the year, the teams will use anything at their disposal. In that sense, you could argue that it's not Horner's or Wolff's fault that they did whatever they could to benefit their driver. The key point here is that the ability to lobby race control in the way that they did shouldn't be one of those options available to them. Brawn compared it to football managers being allowed to run onto the field to argue with the referee anytime there was a contentious decision to be made. And there could be an idea used in football that would work well for F1. As Brawn referenced, football managers are not allowed to run onto the field to remonstrate with the referee, but they certainly don't hide their feelings on the touchline in full view of the watching world. And they aim that frustration at the fourth official, the unfortunate soul who has to stand next to them on the touchline. Alongside the fourth official's more formal responsibilities, that job entails standing there to be shouted at by both managers during a game. It doesn't look like fun. But could F1 take a leaf out of football's book? Has the job the late Charlie Whiting handled so expertly for so many years now spiralled into something that is too much for one person? One thing we don't know is if F1 teams have become bolder with the way they hassle the race director since Masi took over the role following Whiting's death in 2019. Whiting was hugely respected by the teams, having been a key figure in F1 for so long. Perhaps he had a different way of dealing with them, or maybe he wasn't as tolerant of being bellowed at when he was trying to do his job. Maybe the teams viewed him in a different way, so their approach to communicating with him was different. We'll never know, as we never had the luxury of hearing those conversations played out on TV. You could tell from Masi's exchange with Horner during the safety car period in Abu Dhabi that he wanted to be left alone so he could work out what to do. Having a team boss in his ear asking why aren't we getting these lapped cars out of the way wasn't particularly helpful. Given the amount the race director has on his plate during a race, should the teams be in communication with someone else in race control? Can Masi or anyone else that is given that job really be expected to communicate directly with 10 team managers during any session and be able to fully focus on the job of running the race weekend smoothly, fairly, and most importantly, safely? Even if Horner, Wolff and the other 8 team bosses in the pit lane were barred from talking to the race director, they would just get their team managers to do the lobbying on their behalf, so it wouldn't really fix the problem. Maybe F1 needs to change the rules so that those who are allowed to communicate with race control aren't going straight to Masi. Someone else can be bombarded with the questions, complaints and suggestions and only pass on what's relevant to the race director. You could imagine the percentage of stuff that would actually be worth passing on would probably be quite small.